Hey everyone. So my name is Nicola. I work for Arup Smart Cities team, and I want to talk to you about this concept of smart, give you some background about how it's been used and how it is being used today. And then I want to talk about why it's important to you, how it can help make London a healthier city. And then lastly, I want to close with sort of 3 questions to think about. Are you already considering smart in your working realm in London, and why should you be thinking about it? So I'm going to start off with, this is my clicker. What is a smart city? So the concept really emerged in the last 10 years, and it emerged as a result of sort of technology companies using it to describe how this new type of digital technology can improve the efficiency of city systems, whether that's transport or healthcare or electricity. And as a result, the smart city sort of became equated with efficiency. And so the city sort of became viewed as a set of problems that technology can solve. Smart city was used in terms of efficiency, and a sort of view of it emerged that was of this sort of frictionless city enabled by ubiquitous technology, not dissimilar to Ridley Scott's depiction of the future of cities in Blade Runner. It was sort of a completely all-knowing city that was also, as a result, controllable. And I think that the sort of debate has moved on a bit, and people are recognizing that actually smart should not necessarily be thought of as a normative vision. The smart city is not a sort of fantastical, perfect, something that should be aimed for like the healthy city or the resilient city or the sustainable city. Because the truth is that smart technology is actually value neutral. It's an inanimate object. And what's interesting is the way that it's used, it's designed, that matters. And that encapsulates different ideologies. So people are starting to reconsider smart as a tool for cities to then use that tool to achieve their objectives. And those objectives can be healthy, can be resilient. And it's an exciting tool, although this picture makes it look fairly dull. Technology has sort of always had a transformative effect on our cities. So if you think of the car and how that changed the shape of our cities and where we live and work, to the elevator and how that enabled our cities to grow taller, this new wave of technologies is exciting. So I'm talking about the internet, smartphones, social media, the cloud, data analytics. And really, sort of fundamentally, what this new wave of technology is doing is 2 things. It's providing us with a lot of information. So advances in digital sensing, storage and processing is creating an information-rich environment. And this can inform our design of services and cities. It can also inform our behavior in cities, how we move around and interact. And it also can inform the actual operation of the city. And then secondly, this technology is connecting us. It's connecting people and it's connecting things. So social media, the Internet of Things and that sort of thing. And I'll talk about all of this more, but I just wanted to kind of give a fundamental view of what this technology is and what it's doing. And so we see sort of 5 areas where smart can help cities. And I'll talk through each of these and give an example for each one. So the first one is what I'm calling functional, which is around how technology can help us understand and improve the functional constraints of our cities, such as water or transport. So for example, this is Dubai again. This is Dubai's command or control center. And they've run a service since 2007, which is where the police department is cooperating with the health authority and the ambulance services to offer people suffering from heart conditions. They can register their mobile numbers with the police control center, so any emergency calls from their mobile phones will trigger an alert to the ambulance service, who then have to respond within 7 minutes. And this is now being used for other clinical conditions as well as heart, so strokes and a few other things. And so it's just one example of sort of how data and technology can help us improve the operations of the city, to help us manage traffic flows. These control centres are also very much around bringing different departments together to offer a more integrated service. But also data can help us improve the sort of clinical response. So in Rio, for example, dengue fever is an issue, and diagnosis there takes about a week, takes quite a long time. And so there's a unit within the mayor's office that analyses people's reporting of symptoms via Twitter, and also matches that with their location to try and better improve the diagnosis. So there's lots of examples out there about how technology and data can improve systems and improve people operating those systems. There's also environmental benefits. So how can we use technology to sort of measure and improve our cities' environment, so make them less polluted, make them less dependent on fossil fuels, and make them more attractive places? An example of this is a project that we're doing in Christchurch, New Zealand. So following the earthquakes in 2011, there was an opportunity alongside the physical reconstruction of the city to think about digital opportunities. And so our project is around sort of using sensors to gather information about the city's environment, whether that's on air pollution or water pollution. And the first project we did was to examine the water pollution. So following the earthquakes and as a result of the reconstruction, a lot of the waterways were getting highly polluted. And so we gave 200 school children, working with the council, very sort of simple paper-based water sensors to go around and measure the extent of the water pollution in the city's rivers. And then they entered the results through their mobile phones and reported it back to the city government. And then our second project also uses sensors, and it attaches the sensors to asthma inhalers, with people using the inhalers in the city. And every time they click down to get the medication, the sensor measures the air temperature at the point when they click down. And so that sort of is building up a picture of when people are using their inhalers in the city, and what does that mean for improving the air quality. This is sort of examples of how data can start to improve our urban environments. And then there's the social aspect, so using technology to connect people and strengthen social connections. So one example that I really love is the Casserole Club, which was created by the brilliant FutureGov team. And what this is it's a sort of online community network where people can share an extra meal or some extra portions that they have with people that need it in their community. So for example, it's sort of like a local community takeaway, and there's some great stats around it, but it's really combating a mixture of sort of loneliness, particularly amongst the older generation, and also malnutrition as well. But there are lots and lots of examples of this, of how technology are creating these sort of new networks of people, and this can really have an impact in the health realm. So there are a range of apps that are creating networks around social and healthcare. For example, Jointly, Yeko, Home Touch, Cura, these are ones I just Googled yesterday. But these are all around helping connect people that are providing care. So for example, it could help someone with early dementia to stay at home for longer by coordinating their care and treating them to more, or connecting them more closely to their care providers. There's also technology that is directly supporting individuals' health as well, which was mentioned a little bit in the last presentation, but we've got all these apps now that can help us monitor our health and our wellness, so keeping us physically as well as mentally active. And then there's sort of the economic aspect of all of this. So we need to just look across to East London to see how the digital sector is growing. It's now 20%, I think, of all jobs in London. So all these apps and technologies are creating jobs. And one example of this, or a successful example of an app in London, is City Mapper. So this is created using open data sets released by TfL and other transport authorities, and it helps you plan your journeys in London, and it's now been rolled out to a huge number of cities around the world. And so there's a big sort of market now. Data is being seen as a new commodity for cities. And we did a study of the sort of market size globally of all these smart technologies, and we found that globally it was 400 billion, which is just a huge number, but the UK's potential to access that market is about 10%, it's about 40 billion, which is still a huge number. But then there's the political aspect as well. So technology is enabling greater public participation. We now have huge quantities of access to data about our cities, and we also have sort of new ways of participating and engaging with our politicians. So we can use social media to mobilize an online campaign about the closure of a fire station. And politicians have a new capability to respond to that as well, and they have a very important role to play because people are increasingly voting with their feet, so they're leaving cities if they're not working. So I think it's interesting, London's made a start with its Smart London plan, which was created by the Smart London Board that was formed in 2013 as sort of the first output. But it's important to have a sort of clear strategy and leadership because there are disbenefits as well as benefits to all of these technologies. And politicians and the public sector is responsible for thinking about these as well. So for example, as I said, technology creates jobs, but it also destroys jobs. So the seductive advertising of Uber, which is this online taxi service, is an example of how a disruptive digital technology is tearing apart traditional taxi businesses in cities all over the world. So what kind of role do we need to play in sort of thinking about job destruction as well as job creation? How can these sort of privatized, globalized apps start to influence some of our other public services? Maybe this kind of model could move into waste collection. And then we need to think about how technology can exclude people. How also, most people don't really like technology. People don't really necessarily like knowing where their location is, being tracked in real time. And particularly, I think, in the healthcare sense, this pervasiveness of technology in our homes, how do people feel about that? So I think there's another role to think about managing data privacy and security, and also making sure that people are not prevented from participating in their city by being not online. So, to wrap up, what next? So I think with careful design, technology can bring about a lot of benefits for the cities, its inhabitants, making them healthier and more resilient. But I think there's sort of 3 questions I wanted to ask you. So the first one, so how can these sort of new technologies, new business models like Uber be applied to your work? Could we think about using this for patient transport, for example, around London, on-demand transport? Or what's the impact of this in your area as well? That was my sort of first question, quite a big question. And then how can smart tech, all this huge quantity of data and evidence that we have today, how can this be used to better design your services or inform your operations? And also, how are you going to manage all this new stream of data? How are you going to manage the security of it? Do you have the skills to do that? How are you going to make sure that the sort of technology is what we call interoperable, so that the data that's released is released in the same format or the same language, so that it can then easily be combined, so we don't sort of create digital concrete towers almost that don't not talk to each other? That was my second question. And then my third question was, how are you going to manage the public perception of all this technology? How, as soon as you lose trust, it's very difficult to get back. So what sort of processes are you going to use around that? And that was it.
Nicola.